So I'm excited to have this conversation with everybody today. Beth and I thought we'd start with some quick introductions. Then we're going to give you an overview of two resources that we're going to introduce, and we really want to discuss what it is to launch resources like this, and get some perspective from the clean community on their experiences and understandings of what it is to be successful in these launches. So that's kind of where we're going. I think I know almost everybody here, but yeah, I'm Patrick Chandler and a PhD student at University of Colorado Boulder, focused on art science partnerships that catalyze community action on environmental and social justice issues. Hand it over to Beth to introduce yourself here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Beth. I know some of you. I'm a theater professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I'm also associated with the Environmental Studies Department as well. I'm also a rostered professor with them. And I use performance-based methods to engage youth in enacting climate solutions.
I'm going to switch into a PowerPoint here. Okay. Yeah, so we thought that it would be really helpful to just give a bit of an overview of the two resources that we want to introduce to start. The first is this co-produced creative climate change curriculum that's built around a partnership between some of Beth's works and work at the university and also local schools in Colorado. And coming out of that curriculum piloting process, we saw a real need of drawdown accessible adaptations. So we want to talk through both of those resources and keep that to around 25-30 minutes so that we can get to this conversation about launching resources and the experience and knowledge of the group around those topics. To point out also, we are planning to launch both in the next month or so. So they aren't 100% final yet. We're in the final stages there. But also, if there's anything that you see as we're going through that you'd like more information or background on, or you would like the current versions of what we have, please do let us know, and we can get those to you or communities you know who would be interested in getting those sooner rather than later. Okay. Over to you, Beth.
Great. So we're going to be sharing with you a project that began as a performance, and it was really for youth performance to inspire community with hope for climate solutions. Particularly, it was inspired by the 100 Resilient Cities initiative through the Rockefeller Foundation. And Boulder, Colorado, where I live, was one of the first cities included. They were like 3 different acceptance periods that took place. And we were among the first. And I went to the first meeting where our town had a meeting with all the Rockefeller folks. And what I really noticed leaving from that meeting was that there was no inclusion of young people's voices, and that needed, that I took that away as my charge. Like, okay, I'm going to work on using the tools that I have to ensure that we benefit from the contributions of young people when it comes to authoring a plan for a resilient city. So I created a performance experience that would support that. And the first half of the performance experience was really to bring students up to the kind of level of understanding what was going on. And then the second half was to support them in that authorship. And the idea was that the artistic excellence that was in the scientific excellence that from the collaborators, we worked with folks at the National Center for Atmospheric Research and people, and also really high caliber artists, to create this experience for young people that would support them in embodying and experiencing and leading towards excellence. So I think the easiest way to share what the heck this is to just show the 2-minute trailer. And it's the most fun way.
Cool. And I'm going to show the video of that momentarily, but I also want to throw the link to that video in the chat. And this way, if your internet is not so good and you would like to watch this outside of me screening it for you here, you have the ability to do that.
And just to note too, that the video you'll see will represent the creation and development of the show that took place in Tuba City in the Navajo Nation and then in Boulder. And then I toured it to cities across the world that are part of the 100 Resilient Cities initiative.
Okay. There we go. Ah, sorry, just a second.
Just need some sound.
Let's do that one more time. Here we go.
My name is Delai, and I'm 11 years old. We made this timeline for the backdrop of the play. And then we have present day. It's kind of sad. A lot of carbon in the air.
Long time coming, a long time coming, coming, long time coming, a long time coming, a long time coming, coming, long time coming, a long.
But then we have the future, which is happy if we can make it happy.
Over thread and understand. Over time we understand. Fibers will combine to be the fabric of community. Shine is a musical performance for youth community engagement in resilience planning. It weaves together climate science and artistic expression into a funny and powerful story. Shine spans 300 million years of geological time to convey how humanity, energy, and climate are interrelated. This combination of music, movement, and story stirs feelings about the values that bind our communities together. Rehearsing each part of the musical immerses youth in a lexicon surrounding climate, energy, and resilience.
Energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
It leads participants in embodying different aspects of climate science and human development that led us to the point where we are now. The first half of the show is scripted, composed, and choreographed to convey this story that has already been told by history. The second half is open to be authored by local youth to generate solutions for their city's resilient future. Shine celebrates this experience and unites both the audience and the performers to strengthen their resolve to act on their ideas.
Shine, shine, shine.
Okay. Let me go back to the PowerPoint here.
Great. So the story really, as it was kind of shown in the video a teeny bit, anthropomorphizes the character of the sun and FOSS, which is fossil fuels. It shows how fossil fuels got created by taking the energy from the sun through photosynthesis. And it's really this idea of embodying concepts is beneficial for learners. We're really interested in this idea of how do we give this kind of a physical experience that helps people to really understand the science behind global warming and climate solutions, and also this kind of artistic expressive experience to start expressing their ideas and solutions to these climate issues. So yeah, I think we can keep going. So this just shows different things. Here's the other aspects of the show itself. The weaving of community was an important part of showing that when we, it takes a lot to what we weave in to create a community, and that these climate disasters can rip through the fabric of community and leave a community really wondering what next. How do we work towards resilience? And this is a culmination of the first part of it, where one of the people who's the least causing of this global warming is the one who is being hurt by it the most. And the son says to her brother, fossil fuels, what now? Go ahead. And then what now is the Act 2, which is the youth authored solutions. So here we have young people looking at their own local resilience challenges and authoring solutions that would be meaningful in their local context, recognizing that different areas have different kind of challenges. In doing this, we partnered with, can you go back 1 second? In doing this, we partnered with consistently with as many scientific experts as we could, but we didn't put them as the experts. Here in this one, I think you can see my cursor, this bottom photograph, the front person is Becca Safran, a professor of evolutionary biology. In the back there is Eric Cornell, who's a Nobel Prize winning physicist and neighbor and friend professor here, works with Jilla. And he was there too, and he wasn't there as an expert. He was there to be with the young people as they were creating these solutions. Next, please. And we also partnered with our own Museum of Natural History here at the CU campus. And Jim Hakala is a senior educator there, and he has a really successful relationship with a lot of the school districts throughout Colorado in bringing this kind of tactile experience of fossils into the classrooms. So he had created these fossil kits that were very successful, and he had a really established name in the different school districts in bringing this tactile experience of fossils. And so we brought it in and said, hey, let's call it performing fossils, because we're doing the performance of how these fossils then were being compressed into creating this these fossil fuels and telling a larger story around fossil formation. And so we applied for some funding through our university, some outreach and engagement money, got a lot of really good support in working together to create this kind of embodied and tactile approach to engaging young people in authoring climate solutions at the local level.
So that's kind of where I came in, was it, I guess, 3.5 years ago or so, to where Beth had created this performance piece, and Jim Hakala had the fossils in the classroom kit, and we had the amazing partnerships in place. But looking at where things were, resources weren't quite ready to be taken up by classroom teachers. So talking to Beth and Jim, I suggested we go into the curriculum route and create a version of the SHINE experience that would be focused on embodied learning in the classroom. But having created curriculum before, I didn't want it to be that process of, hey, we have created this resource for you, teachers, and bequeath it to you here, use it, and it will lead you to greatness. Like, didn't want to do the top-down curriculum thing. So we really focused on what it would be to create co-produced curriculum with the Jefferson County School District and the schools we were partnering with, the teachers and the students' feedback involved in each step. And we focused on the co-production processes, having elements that made it successful that I have here, but really, really focusing on how to make sure we were getting this combination of expert engagement and stakeholder engagement, and centering youth as initiators and authors of action and knowledge. So as we started working on the curriculum and balancing those two goals, we wanted to make sure that both the art and the science were equally valued and had equal shares in the classroom, and that really we were focused on moving towards school and community action. We came up with the first version of this curriculum with our team in 2019, and we did this great piloting event at Stober Elementary with 4th and 5th grade teachers, in which we really emphasized the co-production process not just being us going into the school as authority figures and saying, okay, now you're going to tell us what we need to do the next step, but considering how to balance power and status by inviting those we were piloting with to the university to give what we could to them and share our space and experience. part of that was dressing in green suits and heading up on top of one of the buildings. These are many of our students and teachers involved in piloting. It was just a wonderful experience of sharing there. And also emphasize the culminating event for this piloting, where we did this performance at the school, the first performance of the Shine curriculum and the Shine play was for the school community itself. And then we also had the parents and other community members come in for a second performance. And there were many things that were successful here. We really appreciated the process and feel good about the lessons, but something became very apparent as we were working with students to consider what resiliency solutions and addressing climate change through action looked like in their own school and community. We realized they didn't have a whole lot of grounding and background to make that happen. So we created the Shine lesson set, which is 12 really cool lessons, but we realized they weren't quite ready to be published out, because first we needed something to ground and provide students with some background, so that when they were thinking about creating that second act for Shine, they would know what the most impactful solutions to climate change were. So we moved into focusing on Drawdown, and I'll turn it back to Beth here.
Great. I think, okay. Hey, Lorato, I'm doing a presentation, sweetie. Sorry, I have a high school kid here. So the thing that should be noted is that that great culminating Earth Day performance that we did with Stover Elementary, the students broke into groups and they each created these skits, and every single skit was a very creative way of how can we collect trash. And really, you know, like picking up trash actually is not a solution to global warming. It is aesthetic, you know, so we realized like, oh, they don't really have access to top climate solutions. We need to provide that. And many of you, I'm sure you know, like I was excited when Drawdown came out with their first book in 2017, 2018, I had Catherine Wilkinson, you know, Zoom into my class, my creative climate communication class, to talk about these solutions. And then when they did their first conference with the Omega Institute that was Drawdown Learn, I thought, these are my peeps. The first way they want to disseminate this is through education. I love this group. And so I was there with a lot of you as well. And the second year again, and Patrick joined in, and we realized that we could take this research that has already been done by the leading experts that are really contributing to this, and we could just make that accessible to these young people, and then they'd be able to choose, and you know, by choosing those, the ones that interested them, they'd be able to align that with the solutions that they're creating that have local relevance. So we teach a creative climate communication course every spring. Patrick teaches it with me. And so we thought, hey, let's make this into a project. Let's have students, university students contributing to this. So we made it in this past spring. We made that our first assignment. And we said, we want to set this up where we're really doing this ethically. So we had our students getting assigned, each little twosome group was assigned a Drawdown solution, and they had to adapt it to a 5th grade literacy level. And we thought, we want to bring in the experts here. So we had our students do their first draft of their adaptation, and then we had them go to University Hill Elementary, a bilingual school in Boulder, and meet with a 5th grade team. So each group had a 5th grade team, like 3 or 4 students, who gave them feedback and were peer reviewers of their work and could tell them, yeah, this works, no, this doesn't work. And this was a bilingual school, and one of the gentlemen who was volunteering at the school on that day was a PhD student in bilingual literacies. So we did this, and this was great. We had this experiential grounding, and then COVID hit. And for the rest of our class, design was like, what do we do? So we realized, let's deepen this experience. So we even had our students doing more on the Drawdown adaptations, and we went even deeper with that. We didn't finish. There are, you know, and this was great. So we're doing this, you know, in the beginning, there were those 100 solutions. 20 of them were still aspirational that showed promise, but there were 100. So one day in class, Patrick and I are wanting to pull up the website, the Drawdown website, and something goes funny, and we're like, what's going on? We realized they've updated it. The Drawdown Review was a 2020 publication that rejudged the solutions on the most up-to-date information and research and compiling of all that and modeling that they had. So we had this kind of like, we had to reorient, but it wasn't a big deal. We could still do it. And so now it was even better because now we're not dealing with this older list that came out in 2017. We had this Drawdown Review 2020 list. So it felt like we could really still have a pretty good shelf life to our adaptation of these solutions. So we are in the process now. We did it with our class and we only got so far. So then we utilized our Inside the Greenhouse funding to get a bunch of interns from the class itself. So we had 3 really talented, highly motivated undergraduate students be our interns over the summer. We brought in the PhD student that I had been referring to, who is a first Spanish-speaking language as his first language person from Colombia. And he worked with us and another PhD student in education to really work all summer long, and we're still doing it now, to adapt these solutions to 5th grade literacy. And then we realized that with this resource of Danny, that we wanted to also try to get at least the first 20 into Spanish as well.
Yeah. So we're in the midst of this work. It's coming along well. We've got the text done for most of these Drawdown adaptations. And a quick note on that languaging. At first we were just calling them translating Drawdown for elementary students, but then when we actually started translating the solution into Spanish, it became really necessary for us to differentiate between the processes that we were doing. So we've moved to talking about this as adapting Drawdown for elementary students and then translating that into Spanish. So when we say Drawdown adaptations, that's what we mean. And we did this on a few different levels. We worked on the text of the Drawdown solution to look at the literacy levels. So we tried to move away from any terms that wouldn't be accessible, and any that we kept in or thought needed clarification, you can see are noted here with the keywords, which are either defined on the side or right after the word itself is mentioned. We also really wanted to bump up the visuals here to provide a little bit more grounding for those reading through the solutions. You can kind of see the way we sectioned it off as well to help break up the ideas and consider one at a time. In addition to translating the language here into Spanish, we're also working with our team to make sure that the images are accessible to second language learners. So a lot's going in here. I think we'll have a full draft in the next month or two. We're working with our student team, and Sarah is just about to graduate. She's an undergrad senior, and you could see she does really nice graphic design work. So we want to honor her work and let her finish that process. But of course, that's tricky at the end of the semester. So she may need an extra month or so to pull it off. But I do want to mention, we've got about 40 of them that are in this shape that you see here. We'll get the other 40 done pretty soon. And if you are excited about this and would like access early, do let me know. We've started piloting these adaptations first with a local climate club of 5th grade students who are giving us their feedback. And then we're moving into a larger piloting effort next semester with elementary teachers in the area. But we've really thought too about the fact that we started in, from the curriculum leading to this to give students access to materials. But when we actually looked at Drawdown and its format and language compared to this, we realized that this is also a really useful education resource for other communities as well to jump in for informal education circumstances, for anyone who wants a less weighty version and a more accessible version of Drawdown. Are you going to jump in there, Beth?
I was just going to say, like faith organizations, it's just, most adults would rather prefer this format and introduction as well.
Mm-hmm. So we're chugging along. We're really happy with the progress we've made, though it has taken us some time to cover the curriculum and the solutions. But now we're in this place where we recognize we've got this resource that when we talk to teachers about it, they're like, yeah, hey, we'd love that. Can you get it to us when it's ready? But we really want this to be more broadly used and accessible. We're in contact with Drawdown and Elizabeth Begley, and they'll help roll it out with us. But we have these two tools, the curriculum and the Drawdown adaptations and soon to be translations. And we really want to make sure we don't flub the launch here. Beth and I have both launched curriculum and educational tools before. We've done it through websites and at conferences, at different targeted outreach, but we feel like in order to maximize impact here, we would really appreciate the Clean Communities feedback on your experience launching both tools like the Drawdown adaptation set, curriculum like our 12 lesson set, and what it means to do that in formal and informal environments to try and do this really well. Beth, do you want to add anything?
I did. I just wanted to add in that we're looking towards both of these as being open source. They're not quite open educational resources because we're not really opening it up for, I mean, I guess we wanted comments back and we'd integrate it in, but it's not one of those things where it's so open that people can go in and actually change it. We aren't really opening it up that people could edit the solutions that we have done. So it's an open source. And we were planning on publishing this on the Inside the Greenhouse website through the University of Colorado. So I think if you have input on, because we have not yet published it, if you have an insight or advice on where we would publish that to get the most validation, to get the most, I don't know, whatever, we'd be open to hearing that kind of advice as well.
Yeah, and I'll start real quick answering Amy's question in the chat there. Curious what kind of professional learning we will be able to offer. And that's part of this whole process. Kind of one of the questions we're holding is like, are there conferences we must do to present this? But in all of our piloting efforts, we've started off with workshops on introducing the materials and how to use them in those professional learning and professional development settings. We just did one with Ed Curation, which is a curriculum organization that is gathering curriculum for districts and educators. So professional development is like a yes, we're doing it whenever we're piloting, and we'll probably hold workshops in the spring. But if you have suggestions for the most valuable ways to do those professional development workshops so that you're not having to do 20 a year and you're still reaching a lot of people, would love to hear about that too.
Although we do have some student capacity and myself, like we do have an appetite for doing that. So if you have ideas for that, we're open to it. Like I'm open to meeting with schools in Idaho, like that's fine.
Frank, did you?
Love to hear from you, everybody.
So I'll be super short. I love the idea. Actually, we thought of this with Paul Hawken at Drawdown Learn 1, and they never really got the version for students. They never took it forward. So if you're doing this with them, and they love the idea of it, that's awesome. But one suggestion would be to not put it on another website with a lot of other things that are on that website that are not this, but to actually make a customized just this website. It's super easy to do that. So it's contained, it's marketable, it's valuable. And I would, so that's just one piece. And then the second one is webinars, like we've been doing with Clean, where we do focused webinars and then we record them and then we post the recording in context of just that product website, I think is definitely easy. But I mean, Beth and Patrick, marketing is the hardest part of this. Getting this to the market, putting in the Creative Commons so it's very, it's very clear that this is public but not editable. I took your point, Beth. But just know that there's a lot of other partners that are good at marketing things, but trying to up the game there. It's a special conversation, it's a special focus, but get it accessible, and then let's have a second conversation about how to get it validated.
Are you kind of saying there, Frank, that we would follow up with you in some of this advice?
I wouldn't say just me. I mean, there are other people in our community that absolutely, but there are other people in this community are really good at the network penetration part. I mean, Bruce Moravchik has been working on this for NOAA for a really long time. I would bring him into this conversation. But this is, I mean, even just look at what Don Haas is, who is the facilitator today, the model they used for the teacher friendly guide. That's just another model that's out there for how to get this into the classrooms. But that was a hard copy version. Just saying, happy to explore it.
I'll also throw out there, I put it in the chat too, but there are some ways that Clean can try to help. That's one of the things I think powerful about Clean with, we don't necessarily market individual resources all the time, but we do through our social media highlight resources, through our newsletters and things like that. We highlight resources. So if we could get it into the Clean review process when the next round of that starts, it takes 6 months to get through the review process or so, but once it does, then we can start highlighting it through some of our other marketing strategies. And Patrick, I can always share with you the contacts I have for marketing our webinars. It might be useful. It has the Know It Plan of Stewards and some of these other folks that Frank just mentioned on there. So I can share that with you to help you market it in the meantime. But I do think putting it into Clean and or some of the marketing through Clean is one of the useful things for the resources in our collection. So the sooner we can get it through review to get it into a point where we could do that, the better for that. So
Awesome.
Yes, and so there are many comments and questions in the chat, which, Patrick's an old hand at doing this stuff, so I know you can see them, but I'll back up to Karen's question about launching. Is your objective to launch it out to the world, like launching a book, or is it something different than that? So what's your measure of success? I think
our measure of success is getting this access to top solutions to as many young people who want to do authentic action as possible. So it's really just, and I think it is global because I think there's that global scope in how, we have a school that I work with in Guatemala, Amaya, in Indigenous Young Women's School that will be piloting it with as well. But really just, getting it in the hands of young people.
Yeah, and I'll throw out a suggestion in addition to all of the good ones that are in the chat, is to reach out to larger districts, and that's a good way to hit numbers if you can be successful at connecting with a large district to do stuff, and then you can point to what you've done in that large district as an example.
Yeah, we're starting that with Colorado. That's really useful. Jefferson County is a good one for us that we've been working with.
And Frank's got a hand up. Grandchild, that is.
There we go. Okay, Beth and Patrick, I got a question for both of you on this score. So the web page exists on the web now, and if so, where does it exist?
Not really yet. Yeah.
Not really yet.
Patrick.
I'm not sure how much, if what you're doing would be a good fit for this kind of resource, but the manual I produced for my students eventually got published through a vehicle we have here at Portland State called Pdx Scholar. And what it is it's, and Beth, when you were talking about something that was open source, which I translate as freely available but not editable, that's essentially what's there. And it's textbooks and all kinds of stuff that PSU faculty have developed that is then widely available. And tracking it, it is widely available. I've seen downloads from at least about 14 or 15 other countries so far. So yeah.
We have an equivalent here at CU at University of Colorado that we'll certainly be working with too. That's great advice.
And I want to mention, I'm seeing a lot of different things on conferences, but kind of like Betsy's list, NAE, NSTA, Clean, Drawdown, Learn, Climate Gen, NOAA. There is a huge list here, and obviously we can't hit all of them. And I think one thing that we don't have a really good feel for is like, okay, so if we want to get this as accessible as possible to be used by as many teachers as possible, do you do as many as possible, or are there 2, 3, 4 that are the essentials? I don't know if there's good info on that.
I'm no expert in answering that, and it's something I wrestle with every year of how do I get the word out about my programs. And you can see that in the chat, I suggested Earth Educators Rendezvous, partially because of how close it is to what you're doing, and also although I have been unable to attend an in-person EER, my understanding of their format is that it would lend itself very nicely to even having significant workshop time to introduce it with teachers from all over the country, and they can carry it back lots of places and you can see where it stick. And it's a different format than a lot of conferences and provides big blocks of time. And I think they would be wildly receptive to what you're trying to do.
Wendy, the only comment I have, we just pitched a workshop around a different webinar, a different curriculum, and that's middle school, high school curriculum. And they actually came back and said, could that be used for undergraduate? Because I think they have a lot of undergraduate faculty participate. So it might be worthwhile checking if they are interested in K-12, in a K-5 curriculum.
Well, I mean, I know they are interested in K-5.
Because they didn't, they told us they wouldn't allow us a workshop unless it was also for faculty.
Yeah, well, one way to spin that for the Earth Educators Rendezvous, which has, for its all, 5-6 year history, has wrestled with the question of engaging K-12 and has not been successful at getting lots of K-12 teachers there, and I'm not sure if they're where they are on that issue, but an awful lot of the participants teach future science teachers or teach future elementary teachers, teach the science for elementary teachers classes. And so I think one way to spin it would be for those faculty. And that would make it fit very nicely into Earth Educators Rendezvous and maybe get you an audience.
Well, it's so interesting because all of my engagement has been through K-12. And so I wasn't aware of this disconnect, which is why it's good we talk.
So you're saying, if I heard you right, Don, that we would put forth a thing saying targeted towards undergraduate students who are science teacher students who would then be able to use it?
Well, I was thinking more of undergraduate teachers, professors who teach the science courses for elementary teachers.
Gotcha.
I see Eric's got a hand up there.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, just a whole bunch of thoughts come to mind, but I just wanted to call out like all the aspects that you've thought through with this in terms of like the idea that the second half is solutions focused is so great and so important for the youth right now. I think we're just hearing that so strongly. The second thing is this idea of it being interdisciplinary, by design. You're integrating art and science right away. So love that. Also like the intern, the high school student helping to sort of decipher the language of the curriculum and make it accessible for the elementary school kids. So that piece is super solid. The piece I was thinking about is just in terms of like the long-term vision and in terms of how much you front load information, which is kind of what's been informing, I guess, this idea of getting stuff in students' hands, because you said they didn't really know how to approach it. Gosh, example. And that's just a dance I think we all play, but I think NGSS really wants us to have folks experience first, and then offers later. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of integrate that. Also, my gut feeling says that this is, while I really appreciate the idea of the K-5 like focus, I feel like this is like such a middle and elementary school potential project too. And I don't know if you've probably talked about that, but I know the magic of theater for me really opened up in high school. That's when I did some theater and I loved it. And the idea of performance, science that integrates a performance, aspect. So I don't know, just some thoughts there, not really a suggestion. The only other thing I'd say in terms of success with rolling out curriculum was trying to do the best you can to embed it into whatever that district is doing. So like we did a lot of work 10 years ago, and the best way we found to integrate was they were using FOSS kits from the Lawrence Hall Science. So we just scaffolded everything we did on top of that. And I know that's a really catered approach, and that doesn't really address your bigger question about do you run it through NSTA or all of that. But the more it can be sort of made relevant for that district, the better, I guess. And teachers get creative and they figure stuff out. The one last thing I would say is, like you were doing, like with that 2017 update, the 2020 update that Project Drawdown made, as much as you can point and create online tools and resources that kind of are like automatically updated versus having to create new PDFs over and over, a new solid, curriculum. If there's a way to integrate that sort of mechanic into the whole project, that's something to think about.
Thanks, Eric.
Can I also ask if folks have an idea of like what Frank said of making it its own website? Do you have ideas of what would be a good title for it? Drawdown Youth Solutions? I don't know. I guess yeah.
Two things. I mean, yes, I would interlink the branding. I would just integrate them if you're able. And the other one is that, Eric, I think you've got a really good point about making it a living resource. I guess my one suggestion isn't how to launch it, but about content. And as we figure out geospatial solutions for local regional targeting, I would make those images that you've got updatable so that those specific images are linkable to what's going on in each community, so that it's a direct reflection of what's going on in each community. And I think maybe technologically we're still kind of figuring that out, but there's a number of different teammates all sort of a part of this that are all sort of working together to figure that out. So if you are working together with the Drawdown Learn campaign, I feel like that should be a direction that we can move towards. Just a thought.
Really cool.
I had a thought about titles like something along the lines of Drawdown Made Clear. And that's maybe it feels a little insulting to the Drawdown people. It's implying as if their materials are not clear. So maybe you don't want to use it exactly the words, but something to emphasize that it's a way to make it understandable for everybody.
I would also put the word empowering in there. I feel like you really are empowering the students to take this in their own hands. And I know that Drawdown implies that, but I like that as a a word in the title.
If I don't mind following up on one thing, because Jim Callahan and I are sort of doing some private chatting back and forth, and we're just talking about this accessibility piece. And I think the students driving that solutions piece, how iterative is it for you all? Like, are you able to capture the ideas that they come up with? Because the African-American community is going to come up with different things that are of a priority than, a different community, and a rural versus urban. are you able to sort of, because there's so much great learning, I'm sure that the project would do if you could sort of capture some of that and see, you know, where groups are taking it in their second act, you know, the individual act that they're creating.
Yeah. Well, and there's a book called Performance for Resilience that I wrote that gives the experience and the lesson learned from the different communities. And it did tour to a lot of different types of communities. So I think that was captured. The intention was for it to be open enough to really be responsive to everybody's local context. New Orleans, with a community that did it in South Africa, did it, you know, so it's interesting how that part pretty much worked. We did it in East London, where it was a pretty diverse group as well. So
I like that though, Eric. I think there could be something very simple done where next to each solution, there could be just a link to who's enacted it and how, and just a quick form of like, where did this happen? Who was involved? What did you do? That's really cool. I noticed both Franks have been waiting.
Frank, why don't you go first?
So Beth, I think I heard you mention something about the fifth grade orientation of this maybe being useful for community organizations like faith groups.
Mm-hmm.
And doing a bit of work with faith-based environmental justice groups. I would encourage you to do exactly that and think about it. I know the bandwidth is pretty wide now, just dealing with elementary, but what I was able to see, I could see as really valuable. And I would suggest that if you're at all interested in that, I would, and in fact, I think in Colorado, there is a branch of this. There's a group called Interfaith Power and Light. And that's one. And then the other one is Green Faith, which is out of Delaware. But the IPLF has a program they call Cool Congregations that tries to get congregations to go through and really actively make their building structure carbon neutral and try to encourage their parishioners to do the same thing. And I just think having a readily accessible version of Drawdown would be really valuable to them.
Good advice.
So I wasn't sure exactly how fifth grade got focused on, but one of the really important parts of the NRC framework and the NGSS is learning progressions. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing across the country, the high school group also need this. And so the differentiation, I'm not sure how much textual differentiation there is for fifth grade to versus high school in some of this, given how little background they've been given in most classrooms. But I just want to encourage you to think about the progression, the learning progression idea. That's one piece. And then I've been talking with Elizabeth Bagley about a dichotomous key for climate solutions, because the 100 plus is a lot, but you know, not every solution works everywhere. So how do you go from where I am, how do I shrink this really large list down to what would be actionable for where we are? And then the last piece of that is a lot of communities are doing climate actions that no one in their community have any idea about. So connecting what the community's doing with what you're learning about, and maybe they haven't gotten a solution that they could, or maybe they got a solution that you're learning about and you could contribute to their one that's already underway, as opposed to trying to start something that already is, but you don't know. So there's just, you know, 3 different ways to think about this, but I would encourage all 3 of them if it's at all possible.
It's been fun. The little group, the climate club, the Cool Kids Climate Club, that has the 5th graders who have been peer reviewing some of our solutions for us locally. They've been working with Chef Ann, who is the Boulder Valley School District chef who oversees all the different food things. And we found this sweet spot because reducing food waste and plant-rich diet features so high on the list anyway. We've really identified that youth have a lot of agency around food decisions. Yep. And so we've really been honing in on that and having a lot of fun with that. And I'd love to know, I work with a young women's group that created this whole thing around recipes for change, all about Drawdown food. And they have this explosive, cool online gallery exhibit. So I'll ask Patrick if he can share that out with you. But yeah,
Awesome.
doing that. And I think also, Frank, what you bring up is we don't necessarily have to wave a flag saying this is 5th grade literacy level. We could just say this is accessible, and then people don't feel stupid if they're in high school using it. You know, it's more fun. So I think that that's a good thing for us to note early on in our copy, that we don't use the word 5th grade. That's been an internal guide for us, and we haven't listened to it completely anyway, because there's some terms that we wouldn't have been able to use, that we're like, no, we need to use this term. Reproductive health, we need to use that term. So we've been, making concessions anyway.
Yep.
And the reason we jumped into there, just because that's where the curriculum was focused, and we needed something for the level of the students at the curriculum. But absolutely, I think it's just a general educational accessible resource.
And it just worked out with the Shine curriculum, that for that kind of holistic thinking, it just kind of worked out that 5th grade was kind of the lowest you could go, where they could still kind of get it and translate that and then make that into solutions. I don't know, at least in my experience.
Yeah, well, and it's also worth thinking about the English as a second language learners at the high school level, and bringing it to them. It is also a minute past the hour, so I need to head off to another meeting, which I'm a minute late for. But this was great. Thank you very much. I'm excited to.
Thank you so much, everybody, for the guidance.
Yeah. Great stuff.
What a group.
Great seeing you, Beth.
So appreciative.
Thanks, y'all.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.